Welcome to Ride On, episode 4. I'm James Gross, and I'm with my co-host, Julia Thane. Julia, how you doing?
Doing okay, James. We got a lot of rain, a lot of snow coming in Southern California. I know we don't normally talk about the weather, but I feel compelled to because it's weird. It's weird weather.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's been very weird. Not so micro-friendly, but as our friends around the world do it, I'm sure we can do it too. Have you ridden it all this week in the bad weather?
I actually have not, but I have been thinking a lot about our friends in Copenhagen or Berlin or, wherever they're normally still riding through the snow. Here, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it, but, kudos to them for being able to do that over there.
Yeah, great. And just, keeping on the theme from last week, what's the beverage of choice this morning?
Oh, I've made my way through my oolong tea and now I'm onto water. I know. So interesting. What about you, James? What's the mug choice looking like today?
My second coffee. So yeah, and it is. Yeah, I do like the slightly outwardly shaped rim. So this is a great mug. I recommend it. Wonderful
If
design.
you don't have a new mug every single episode, James, I'm going to be disappointed.
I don't want to disappoint you. All right. So for folks listening at home, Julie and I will cover 6 topics this week around the world of micromobility. This could be anything from new vehicles launching to, public policy, infrastructure. And if you stick around this week, we also have potentially something very different and very new that we're excited to show you. So please stick around for the whole episode and hopefully we'll make it worth your time. On that, I think we should get starting with one piece of housekeeping before we get into the topics. And that is we just announced the Micromobility Startup Awards, our first time ever doing an official startup award pitch where you'll be able to come in and you'll have 3 minutes to pitch on stage at Micromobility Europe or Micromobility America. This comes off the awesome success of the Riders' Choice Awards, where we'll, again, give out awards based on the category that you're in as a startup. The only requirement is that you have raised less than $20 million in venture capital, and you will be judged during your 3 minutes pitch against other companies in your category. And the judges will be venture capitalists, founder CEOs, public policy people, basically just people that are in the industry and very knowledgeable on the industry. The first Startup Awards will happen, of course, in Amsterdam in June, and then also in America in the fall. You can submit your pitch now, just at this page right here that you see on my screen. And the only other thing I'd mention is that we are heavily favoring people that are launching. So any startups that have any sort of launch or a news or announcement, of course, we'll have a lot of press there. We'd really appreciate to just let us know what you'd like to launch. And that will really ideally help us get you into this pitch contest. We're expecting over 100 pitches that we'll be able to handle. This will be like almost a day and a half of pitching. So we'll be able to take on a lot. We already have a lot of demand. We just announced this earlier this week. But get your startup in if you can, and we'll let you know as soon as we can if you've made the pitch contest. Julie, are you excited for the Startup Awards?
I can't wait for the Startup Awards. And I was actually just thinking, James, is there going to be a re-landscaping of the micromobility landscape pre or post the Startup Awards?
Good question. I mean, we get new startups every day coming into the landscape. Yeah. And, I don't think we need to necessarily re-landscape, but it is amazing, because we announced the Startup Awards on Thursday, so yesterday, and, we've already gotten quite a few submissions, and quite a few submissions were not in the landscape. So even though, we're up to over 1,600 companies in the landscape, there's still new startups constantly coming out. And again, I would urge everyone, if you're not in the landscape for whatever reason, you can easily just submit at micromobility.io/landscape, because it's really important that you're in there and we have you categorized so that when we do contests like this or the Riders' Choice Awards, you're there. But yeah, I think it's really fun this idea that, again, you'll be competing in your category. I think that's a really nice way, of course, to do it.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to see all the new startups, all the new launches that are going to be happening. I mean, 1,600 companies is great. And I know in the past I've said maybe it's time for the micromobility industry to start contracting, but I'm actually going to say I was wrong. It's not time. We should still be doing this Cambrian explosion of micromobility startups, because 1,600 startups, again, it's great. Let's see 3,200, let's see 6,400. Let's just keep kind of doubling and tripling in size, because I think there's so many innovations yet to be unlocked. And it's really, really exciting from a consumer perspective, especially. actually, not to mention just a fan of the industry, to be able to see all of these new ideas being launched.
I agree. Are you going to be a judge?
Can I be a judge? Sure. Yeah, I have enough opinions that I can be a judge.
I think you're very knowledgeable. I think you might be very busy these 2 days, though, in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
With the city of Balls State and everything else. We might need to clone Julia. That would yeah, I think
we can have VC Julia and we can have policy Julia. Yeah, it sounds good.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so speaking of policy, James, should I jump into some of the topics for this week?
Right on. Let's do it.
All right, let's get going. Okay, so the first topic that I have today is about parking spaces. There's a neighborhood in Berlin called Grafkitz. I have absolutely no idea to say this, so I'm sorry, Germans, for butchering the name of this Berlin neighborhood. Please drop in the comments how you say it properly. But basically, this neighborhood in Berlin is working to ban almost all parking spaces this summer. The summer is, 3 months. Local authorities saying that they're going to scrap all of the neighborhood's parking spaces as part of a social experiment. They really want to test the waters of the German capital's car-free culture. Or car-free future, rather, car-free culture future. This is something that in the urban design realm, we call tactical urbanism. Usually it means that you do something temporarily, you see how it works, you see how people react to it, and then you figure out if it's something that you want to make permanent or not. At the same time as you're doing this, taking away of parking spaces, normally you put in anything from mini parklets to ping pong tables to, I don't know what else, like bike storage for e-bikes, but just to see how people react. What's really interesting, actually, if you read through the article, is that folks, even in Berlin, which you would think is generally progressive, not just on bikes, but on climate, are actually not as much in favor of this idea, even though it's just for 3 months. You would think like, oh, okay, I don't know. If somebody said, let's do this in LA, I'd be like, absolutely right on, and ride on, and want them to do it immediately. But here, there's been a bit of a resistance from the public. So my prediction actually is that in 3 months from now, you're actually going to see everybody switch their opinions, really love this, want to make this permanent, rather than what they're doing right now, which is kind of some skepticism and not being sure whether or not this is going to work. So James, what do you think? 3 months from now, are they going to love it? Are they going to hate it? Are you going to see this roll out over all of Berlin?
I mean, I applaud the effort. I'm so intrigued to see what happens. I agree with you. No matter, and we've spent some time in Berlin. We had Micromobility Europe in Berlin a couple of years ago. Rode all over. It's such a beautiful city to ride, especially in the summer. But there's still a lot of cars, and of course, Berlin and in Germany in general are very known for the automobile. So yeah, you're gonna, parking, as we always talk about, is cold dead hand stuff. And there's a lot of people that really believe parking is, you'll take it from my cold dead hands. So I'm curious. I applaud them for trying to do it. And Julia, so of course we have Micromobility Europe, and then we have Eurobike later in June. So I plan to be in Germany later in June. I really want to see what this looks like.
Yeah, you should. James, report back. You got to on the podcast. You got to show us some pictures, show us some videos. Maybe you can just be in, Grafkitz or however you say it as you're recording the podcast so we can see what's happening.
Yeah, you like tactical urbanism. How about tactical YouTubeism? Like I'm going to be on the ground reporting
from the fields. Yeah, no, we got to see it. And I think, to be honest, this is a model that has happened before, of course, but I think it's going to continue to happen, especially in the EU. And the reason I say that is because the EU Parliament wants Europeans to cycle twice as much by 2030 in order to combat climate change. And they put out this, I don't know what they call it, declaration. I don't think it's like a regulation or legislation, but basically this goal of having Europeans cycle twice as much by 2030. In places in Europe already, but places like Ghent, cycling has already doubled since the city adopted a new transportation plan in 2017. So I think that, if you're going to set that goal, though, of cycling twice as much by 2030, you have to not only do things like this, where you're actually changing the road, you're changing parking, you're prohibiting cars or charging more for parking. You also have to think about how you start to roll out bike share, micromobility lending, micromobility everything programs to people so that they get, or so that we get butts and seats, as we always say.
Did you see anything in that article in the EU Parliament on, again, something we always talk about with incentives? I'm just curious how much of that is a part of it. I'm very concerned about some of these government mandates. Like, in California, we have the no gas cars by 2035, and like clearly not a lot of detail, which is fine. Hey, big crazy goal, but this is really ambitious. And again, I don't think people do things necessarily that the government tells them just because they tell them to do that. I mean, you gotta pay me, you gotta show me why.
Yeah, right. Show me the money.
Just curious there. Is there any show me the money in this proposal?
I mean, not that I've seen. So I think you're right to say that in politics and with things like this, especially if the date is later, 2030, 2035, 2040, 2050, you basically get to make these like, kind of high level statements without putting much teeth behind them. Hopefully in the EU that changes, or hopefully, country by country that changes. I think in the US, what you're seeing is state by state, city by city, we're starting to roll out incentives. But I would say for right now, it seems to me like the government is punting on solutions and they're really leaving it to the private sector. And so, James, that's why it's, good to see companies like Dance. Do you know Dance?
I do know Dance. And yeah, okay. Living team, former founders of,
SoundCloud.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I can think of that right there. Yeah, so love to see entrepreneurs super successful in building something like SoundCloud now, of course, so heavily involved in micromobility. So yeah, do you know them? Excited? What's the news on them?
I mean, just that they raised a little less than $13 million to expand their service across Europe. So they're Berlin-based, actually, but also a subscription micromobility startup. So actually, speaking of you going to the EU Bike Festival conference later this year in Germany, you should check them out. I think that one of their main customers is tourists, actually, who are visiting new cities, who want to be able to just get a micromobility device for the time that they're there, for a week, a month, or whatever, and just check it out.
Absolutely. Eric should be, of course, at Micromobility Europe, and subscription being a big part of what we've been talking about. We'll have the dance crew there in Amsterdam
to do a dance. Yeah.
and some of the comments where people want us to talk about subscription more, I think, maybe at some point we'll put it out an open call to Eric at Dance to come on the show and talk about what he's up to. I mean, it's great to see the raise, especially in these kind of harder times to fundraise. It seems like a really strong vote that they're doing well and seeing the growth they want to. So yeah, congrats to Dance. Julia, I'll start with my first one. I'll actually stay over on the other side of the pond from where we are and talk about the news of, and again, another one where I'm going to stress my ability to say this correctly, I think, and where I love to just lean heavily on you, Julia. This is the announcement of CoModule actually acquiring Ampler and then building a parent brand where you have CoModule, Tool, Ike, and Ampler under one parent company. And you spell this K-O-U. I'm going to say this is a Co-Mobility Group. Julia, do you have a guess on how you say that?
Maybe not an accurate one, but I would say Co.
Co. So you're more Co, I'm more Co.
Yeah, let's see who's right. If either of us is right. I'll say Co.
You're like,
it's like cool, but like Co. Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking more like coup, like, you're going to overtake the government.
Well, that too.
Yeah, maybe that's kind of like that's an interesting name. So I love the acquisition news. It's cool to see the space kind of doing some consolidation. But also, I really applaud these guys in terms of some of the ambition in their announcement. Probably the best thing, and the coolest thing would be that they said they want to do $1 billion in revenue. You're laughing at that. Funny. Wow. Wow.
It was such a dad joke. Like I could not laugh.
Oh, dad joke. Okay. Okay. I think you think I'm funny, Julia. Come on. I mean,
Oh, yeah, right.
Yikes. Maybe not. Well, okay. So the coolest thing is by 2031, they're saying they want to do $1 billion in revenue, which is a very impressive milestone coming from companies that literally were started at the advent of micromobility. So here is a company rolling up brands, providing a lot of different solutions across their portfolio, both software, hardware, both shared, both and owned, really kind of like, almost representing the entire landscape, and then kind of coming out and saying, hey, we think we can do $1 billion in revenue by 2031, which is, all of 8 years away. So yeah, awesome news. Very excited. Out of Estonia. All these companies will be, of course, at Micromobility Europe. And, you know, I think even some like a Co-Module won a Rider's Choice Award. So a lot of popularity at the voting level. So I think it's just really cool to see. I'm curious if, you know, other people see consolidation coming or other acquisitions. But yeah, congrats to this crew and to the new pair brand. And yeah, Julia, you have any thoughts on acquisition, on where you see things potentially going with some of these companies that clearly have a lot of complements and maybe are better together than apart?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned this because, of course, I started out the episode saying that we need 2 times, 3 times, 4 times more the number of micromobility companies that we currently have in the landscape. And your first story is about consolidation. What I think this says more about the market is not that consolidation is necessary, but actually vertical integration is necessary. And that you're seeing a lot of companies who are understanding if they don't have control of their supply chain, if they don't have control over the customer experience, if they don't have both the hardware and software, and they're dealing with something that's on a subscription basis or a leasing basis, or like a rental basis, then it's actually really difficult for them to be able to make money and also to balance out where they might be making revenues, profits, and where they might not be. So I think I'm actually really excited to see how this turns out because it could be a broader story for the industry about the importance of vertical integration, of being able to own more parts of your business in order to ensure that sort of seamless customer experience. And, you know, James, what it also makes me think about, well, actually, let me ask a question first. Do you know if all these companies are Estonian based? Like, are they just in Estonia or are they all over?
Julia, I can't answer that question because it appears we have a knock on the door.
What?
For the first time ever at Ride On, I think we have another person joining us. So let's see if I can get this to work. I'd like to welcome in Levi Conlow, the co-founder and CEO of Lectric e-bikes. Levi, can you hear us?
Dude, I'm in. Man, this is fun.
Amazing. Okay, Levi, just let the audience know.
Yeah.
You are the first ever guest of the Ride On show that Julia and I put on each week. So
wow, is that a lot of pressure? You guys should have showed someone else. Jeez. All right. Thank you. But man, well, you know, you can only go up from here, I guess.
If that wasn't enough pressure, Levi, we actually, so we do about these 5-minute segments. So you're going to be one of our 5-minute segments. And what Julia and I talked about was actually having you pitch us on why we should get the new Lectric XPedition, the cargo bike that you've announced to everything I can see is rave reviews on the internet. You've really blown up the internet here. And so we're going to allow you to pitch us on why we should get it. And if you pitch us successfully, we're actually going to share our screen and check out as we're speaking. So we're going to purchase the bike.
Oh, challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Oh God, this is the easiest thing ever. The bike speaks for itself, dude. Man, you'll give me 5 minutes. I only need about 90 seconds to fire this one off. Okay. Well, so the reality is, for those that aren't familiar, cargo bikes are one of the best solutions you could possibly get in order to, really effectively electrify your transportation today and not make as many compromises as what other, options out there might be. So electric cargo bikes are something truly special in that respect. But, what helps the Lectric XPedition stand out is just the sheer capability that it has. And it doesn't matter if you stack it up against a product that is literally triple the price, it is just simply better. So what we're staring at right here, it sits on these 220 by 3-inch tires, both of them pre-installed with slide. That's one of the things that Lectric hasn't gone to just as a convenience thing. It sits on this really rigid frame. And what you're going to see here is this web design in the back. We were super conscious about our frame structure because A, we wanted to be able to carry a bunch of weight, but B, we wanted it to, when you don't have the back loaded up, for you to still experience this just like a normal bike. So, this thing structurally, integrity wise, was tested against the DIN standard and can hold 450 pounds. And it's not that it can just do that, it's the motor that actually empowers it to take that weight on and still take on your everyday lives and everything like that. I actually got a really cool project with a bunch of these going to Africa, and they're going to be used to move 400 pounds of water, across villages and everything like that. So super, super excited. So we have the frame integrity to do something like that. We have the motor to back it up. And also, people will use any excuse they possibly can of why not get a e-bike or an e-cargo to replace their car. Whether it's, I have too many kids or this, that, or whatever. Throw 2 kids on the back of this, no problem. Do you have hills in your neighborhood or in your city? This will literally eat it up. This is Russian Hill, which peaks out at 31.8 degrees, throttle only, no pedaling. It did Alba Road with 350 pounds on it. And that's a 3.2 mile stretch with one of the parts in it peaking out at over 25 degrees or 25% grade. So like it gets rid of the reasons of why not do this. Meanwhile, we've packaged it together with an absurd amount of battery. This is or a single battery option, 14 amp hours of battery, but you can do a dual 14 amp hour battery at $16.99. The single battery is $13.99. And where else can you get 1.35 kilowatts of battery at that price packaged in something like this? It's just, it is an industry first. The bike shows up to the customer fully assembled. That's another reason people will say no. Like, I just don't want people to say no to this product. Get rid of any of the friction or any of the excuses, and you end up coming up with something really sick. We paired it with hydraulic brakes because you're going to have that added weight, and you can go on, more gnarly hills, steeper grades, and everything. And I think that was also an important factor that we layered into it. So spec per spec, take the price out of it. I don't think there's really any e-bike, period, under $3,000, $4,000 maybe, that even deserves to be within like 10 yards of this thing. Just in terms of sheer capability, it can do more. That's not an if, and, or but. Just if you run the map, if you look at the componentry and you do the testing, it outperforms things that are 2 to 3 times the price. And I think it is one of the most important additions to the, electric vehicle category, because it's basically starting to show us what's the ceiling, or what's possible with cool EVs at this class 3 e-bike space.
I love it. You're doing great. That's a very strong pitch. I think there's a couple of things I just want to ask you about. So, clearly the price is, amazing. And, you were on with Oliver on our Micromobility podcast talking about this in depth, but just for all the viewers, like, you are talking about, you're literally dropping the price as other companies are raising prices because of what you're seeing in the supply chain, because you're seeing component costs lower. Like, I just want to compliment you on that. At $13.99 retail, we're going to talk on the show about a subsidy that, in Ireland, they're offering a subsidy for up to 3,000 euros for a cargo bike. Like, you could buy 2 cargo bikes with the government incentive. I just applaud you there. The thing if I were to read some of the comments, people are skeptical on your hydraulic brakes. How is this such an impressive bike with hydraulic brakes? Mechanical brakes has been a big challenge for a lot of cargo if people have a heavy load. Like, can you speak to your hydraulic brakes really quickly and like what you expect from them and how they work? Versus
they're two piston Zoom hydraulic brakes, 180 millimeters. I think I know that video hasn't come out yet, but one of the industry authorities is doing brake tests and everything like that, and they outperform even some of our competition. And so the reality is you go with if it was my own brakes, right? Maybe right for some concern, but Zoom manufactures a couple 100,000 hydraulic brakes a year, and so we have the utmost confidence in it. And I think the 180 millimeter rotors also play to kind of some of the favor here. And part of it is just, we want maximum stopping power because that was actually a change after our San Francisco trip where we wanted to, add in additional stopping power because the original prototype of this was using 165s.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, and you mentioned Russian Hill earlier. That's a hill in San Francisco, which I have a lot of friends. I'm sure Julie does too. Like, people don't ride cargo bikes that often in on those hills because, of course, the challenges. And it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is the XPedition can take those hills out.
Yeah,
without a problem. Incredible.
Yeah.
Julie, do you have anything for Levi?
I mean, Levi, I was going to say, you make a good pitch. And a lot of the things that I was listening for, maybe some different things than James is listening for. I'm listening for, how do you use it? Why do you use it? Is it good to go up hills? Especially because I'm in LA and people don't think of us as being a hilly city, but we're a pretty hilly city. And even some of the commuter bikes that I've tried out, can't actually handle the hills. But I think what you're talking about in terms of being able to throw a couple of people or kids on the back, being able to carry around groceries, cargo, whatever, very appealing. But the thing, Levi, that I always think about, especially when I think about e-bikes and e-cargo bikes in particular, is weight. I mean, I'm living in a place where I do have to go up and down stairs. And I know a lot of folks who live in, apartment buildings, et cetera. Just curious from your perspective. I mean, you can tell us how much it weighs, but how do people navigate having an e-cargo bike if they don't live in a place where they can just kind of like roll it into their house or the backyard or their garage?
I think, I'm not going to BS you, where I think a cargo bike in an apartment can certainly be challenging, bringing it up stairs and everything like that. What is nice is that 15 pounds of it, or between the two batteries that they go to the dual battery option, are all very quick release, can easily be taken off, and you can kind of shed some of that weight. Also, those are the most expensive part of the bike, so you can kind of keep that removed from it. But the bike itself weighs in at, I believe, 67 pounds with the batteries. 69 pounds with one battery in it and 62 pounds no batteries on it. So it's definitely on the lighter side of some of the cargo competition out there. That's partly due to we just commit to aluminum frames. I think if you're using a steel frame, that is a very cheap option and a cheap decision where you're not getting that structural integrity buyback that you're compromising on just saving money. Any reason someone would say that they've gotten steel, it was strictly due to a price decision more than anything. So yeah, that's one of my hot takes. But
heard it here first.
yeah. But no, I think, at 62 pounds, and the wheelbase of it. Now, we did do a tighter cockpit on this, especially in the front here. So the actual wheelbase of this is actually more in line with our X Premium bike. So it's still a little bit longer, but not as long wheelbase total compared to some cargo competition. We really like this, compact cargo-esque style that, some of the biggest names in cargo love, just because it's easier and it's more, it makes more sense for me to play.
It hits like that mid-size SUV in the car equivalent so well. And I want to compliment you because I've seen a lot of women actually on Twitter talking about the lower profile of the cargo, which I think is like, again, one of those things that's such a no-duh when you see it, when you see your wife on it, when you see the kids on it. Can you speak really quickly to the low profile nature of it and how low it sits to the ground and how that makes people feel much more safe when they're riding?
Yeah, so 18-inch, standover height, which is nice. But reality is the 20-inch tires, for example, right? Not going 22s or 26s on this, right? We want to bring down that center of gravity to as low as possible. And we actually are super mindful with, how our accessories attach and where do we actually rate the loaded weight to keep the weight lower on the back in particular. So where the running boards, where the foot pressure goes, like that was one of the calculations that our team did. So we're super mindful of trying to disperse and push down as much weight as possible. And what that helps you with is when you got two kids on the back or something and they're a little squirrely, they're not too top heavy that it feels like the bike has any flex to give and any real authority to them in the back. That's probably the most impressive thing about this product if you were to compare it, especially against any budget e-cargo bike under $3,000. There's a jump once you kind of get to the higher price points in terms of structural integrity, but like just our rigidity rating on this, and I don't have it at the top of my head, but it's about 40% structurally more firm than any other of our best competition under 3,000. And that's just something that doesn't really pop up as much on the spec sheet, but as people start riding them, we start shipping them in a couple weeks, we'll really appreciate significantly.
Yep. No, I agree. And then final thing, Levi, again, I think it's something you guys are going to be known for a long time, is this concept of the fully assembled
yeah, agreed with that.
I don't assemble my car when I buy it. Why am I assembling? Why is it assumed I can assemble this thing? Can you speak to that real quick and what in the service that you provide there?
Yeah, we just want to be frictionless. The reality is if you have to build your bike, that might be a reason you don't buy the bike. Or if you buy the bike and then I'm trying to upsell you, hey, we'll send this service to you to build it. That's another friction point of, well, now I thought I was going to spend this much money. Now I got to spend $200 more. Like, I just want to eliminate those reasons. And what we have found is that, and our evidence is the fact that we've shipped nearly 300,000 bikes, 100% of them all fully assembled, is that it's our job to build bikes, and we can build bikes really freaking good compared to, if we send you the parts and then you do it. I think that's actually one of Lectric's biggest advantages over our competition is, if you get your bike and you build it, you may build it wrong, right? I'm sorry, James, but you might, right? And you might, you might be calling in and saying, hey, this isn't right, or I'm missing a part, or this, that, or whatever. And that creates customer service interactions and friction. And we just have no interest in that, because if you have to build it, you might have to ask, where on earth do I even go to build this thing? And we just don't want that. And that's the reason our team in particular is so much smaller than our competition as well. So like we've been hyper scalable, but it's all due to the efficiencies all the way from product design and then, customer delivery.
Yep. Okay. So fully assembled cargo, which again is incredible. I think it's a huge point. So I think we're out of time with you, Levi. I can't make any decisions, so I rely on Julia for everything. I got it in the car. I'm gonna have to blow out my credit card.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Max.
Yeah,
the internet.
God, I got way too much information now. Wait, grab my phone real quick, screenshot that.
Security number? Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, what's your mother's maiden name, by the way?
It's a tough world out there. But,
wow, what's the password?
We're doing it live.
Oh God, we're doing it live.
All right, James. Well, am I doing the final judgment?
Yes, you are.
Right on, James. Right on.
Yeah, I guess that's the same. It's in the cookie held.
Man, this is exciting. Man.
And for everyone at home,
we pushed it through. Let's go, man.
Opinion, not yet. Can't do it. Sorry. Awesome. Levi, you were such a good sport. This is got to be an XPedition bike for one of our viewers. We're gonna give it away next week. So, of course, subscribe and leave a comment. But yeah, Levi, you sold us. You have an amazing vehicle here. Over 300,000 bikes you mentioned. I know you said 200,000 bikes maybe you'll sell this year. Incredible growth. Congratulations to you and the whole crew. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Right on. Happy riding to whoever wins it.
Awesome. Thanks, Levi.
Bye. All right. Julia, how'd that go?
I mean, I thought that went great. To be honest, James, with the electric bikes, I almost just want to stop at the price point. The price point is so good with them that you could drop down the quality of the bike and I think people would still be excited about it. But the fact that then they back it up or seem to back it up with quality, it's just it's hard to beat.
Fully assembled, again, it's just like friction, like Levi says, he's such a clever entrepreneur. It's so friction. So much of the purchase experience is still full of friction even after you bought it. Removing that friction, the lower profile, the hydraulic brakes, which I haven't tested the hydraulic brakes there, but I've ridden a lot of mechanical brake, cheaper cargo bikes that are really not always great. So yeah, let's see it. We'll get it. We'll give it to again the top comment next week. So yeah, definitely participate, and we'll ship it out. So, Julia, that was one of my topics, Levi. So, yeah, let's get it.
Where do you go from here?
I know. It's all downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, James, so maybe let's switch gears almost entirely because I think it's hard to go anywhere else from there. And let's talk a little bit about software. So, one of the things that kind of rocked the micromobility world back in 2018 was something called the mobility data specification. James, do you remember this? I would say it was controversy. It was also really good policy. It was when city government, departments of transportation in particular, tried to keep pace with some of the micromobility operators. Okay, so for those viewers who don't know, the mobility data specification was something that was launched back in 2018. It was when all of the scooter share companies were just dropping their vehicles kind of left and right in cities really across the world. And what LA Department of Transportation decided to do, along with now more than 160 cities and public agencies, is roll out what they called the Mobility Data Specification. It's a data sharing protocol. It allows private scooter and bike share providers to communicate with public agencies, and allows public agencies also to communicate with those providers and say, you can park here, you can't park here, you have to have some distribution of your vehicles in order to comply with equity considerations, et cetera. So the big news, James, from this week is MDS 2.0 is rolling out. What this does is not just provide these policy and provider APIs for micromobility, but also starts to do it for ride hail, car share, taxis, and delivery robots. And let me just tell you, when I was in LA city government, it was just right after the mobility data specification was launched. It was just right after cities started to say, let's press pause on having scooter share roll out without any regulations across the city because we're getting so many complaints. There are injuries, there are property damages. And it was really MDS that allowed for the scooter share companies to come back in because there was some visibility around where the vehicles themselves were and more. And I think, if I'm being honest about it, it was both, MDS was both something that I would say stalled the industry for a little while. I mean, they weren't used to regulation. They weren't used to having to share information with government. There was some clunkiness around that interaction. But at the same time, it was the only thing that allowed for it to continue to happen. And so now you've seen kind of the gradual rolling back out, the maybe slight amelioration of relationships between scooter share companies and bike share companies and city governments. And it's partly because we're starting to get this data sharing component right, and being able to have government have just enough access to insights or to data to be able to make sure that streets and sidewalks are safe. So, James, curious, what do you think about this? Is this going to continue stalling the mobility industry, mobility tech industry overall, or you think this is something that's helpful to continue rolling out?
It's an area that I think I rely on you a lot for. I mean, clearly you've been hands on it, and you were part of LA City, what actually was so important in their rollout. I would say I tend to err on just the concern being, in general, it appears we've overregulated a little bit, or we put a pretty big blanket on the fire of micromobility, shared micromobility. And so anytime standards are very good, I'm a big believer in standards as it relates to, things like that we use every day, like the internet, like with HTTP and, mail standards, so all of that idea in general, like data being standardized, I think is very good. But who controls it? How does it live? So much of the reasons why internet protocols tend to work is because no one controls it really. I just worry that there's a little bit too much of a heavy hand here on the government side with MBS, but I'm not totally sure on that. I'm skeptical, and I think probably coming off some subtopics around this, like where there's not good evidence, or there's evidence that there's too much regulation, is for instance, a city in Canada called London put out an RFP recently where they received 0 responses to their RFP for a bike share, which is, you roll back when MBS came out and you had all this competition going on, and, basically companies were willing to do anything the government said because they wanted to be involved. That's pretty amazing that this report has come out now that literally no company competed for the offer. And I think that's a good sign that something's wrong, that maybe these RFPs are not written correctly, that they're too burdensome, and things like that. So there's this also comes on the heels of Bird backing out of San Francisco. I think the quote there was, unfortunately, the regulatory environment in the city, including the fine structure, has been uniquely challenging, making it extremely difficult to operate a financially sustainable program. So, a lot of what we've been talking about recently is how the rising interest rates have really hurt companies. The idea that it's not a grow at all cost model anymore has really hurt a lot of venture-backed companies. I think the same message needs to get across to the government, that maybe the zero interest rates are gone, the free money is gone.
Yeah.
These companies have to make a profit now, and if you overregulate them, they can't make a profit. And so the Bird news, the Toronto news, I think is some of that, to where I'm skeptical a little bit, but I rely on you, Julie. I think you know it a lot better than I do.
Yeah. I mean, James, a couple other points on that. I mean, I think what city governments are realizing now is that they can't just put up capital investment into the bike share, scooter share operators. They actually have to fund some of the operating costs. And so that's what happened in London, Ontario, not London, but London, Ontario, Canada, is that, they had all this capital funding, or $750,000, I think, Canadian dollars in capital funding, but they had no cash for operations. And the bike share operators were just like, well, we can't do it for that. And so, I think, government, in terms of understanding the business model, needs to start seeing that, maybe it's helpful to put up some of the money in the capital side of things, but actually the operation side of things is where you really need to subsidize to begin with. And not necessarily subsidize the companies, but really subsidize the customers. And James, where I also think you're seeing that reflected is, there's continued turbulence in the micromobility or shared micromobility operation space, where you have a company like Lyft that is not doing that well. That's, overall valuation has dropped from whatever it was, $22 billion, I think, at its high, now to much lower than that. The employees there are saying, we didn't export our bike sharing services fast enough. We didn't export our other services internationally fast enough. Whereas some other companies did. Companies like Lime actually are going profitable. So they said they had a record $466 million in gross bookings last year. They also had an EBITDA of $15 million. Basically, what I'm trying to get at here is just micromobility operators, or shared micromobility operators, are kind of in a turbulent mode, with some at the top of the wave and some at the bottom of the wave, trying to figure out how do they interact with government, how do they win these RFPs, how do they show governments, and how do they prove to governments that they need to not just put up money for the capital costs, but also for some of the operating costs. And I think you're going to continue to see this just varied landscape in terms of who's doing well and who's doing not. And I mean that both from the government perspective and also from the bike share and scooter share operator perspective.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate what you said there, because I think I went pretty negative maybe, and this reason beat up. The Lime going profitable is an incredible accomplishment. I think there's definitely some examples of other shared companies that have also shared scooter or bike, in this case, companies that have gone profitable as well. The Lime has considerable scale at $466 million in bookings. So we're talking about a bigger one able to show profitability, and one that's been well capitalized with plenty of venture, right? I think they last raised about $500 million in 2021. So this was not a company that was forced to go profitable. I think they've gone profitable because I think it's the right thing for their business in terms of how they're going to, show their next shareholders. Maybe that's in the public markets. how they can run an efficient business. So yeah, this has like sort of been buried in a way by us, and it absolutely should be highlighted and celebrated. Some of the EBITDA, numbers, it's not like it's WeWork's like community adjusted EBITDA, might not be real. It seems like this is very real and really profitable. And Julia, I know you spoke to Wayne Ting on stage.
I did. Yeah, that was a really fun conversation actually. And he's great. I mean, he's awesome for trying to reunite or unite, for that matter, the micromobility industry, and just say like, we got to go up against the auto OEMs, or for that matter, we got to try to partner with each other so that we're not speaking out of both sides of our mouths.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And that was a great conversation that you can see on YouTube. And so overall, to round it back maybe a little bit, MDS sounds like it's continuing on, which is great as a standard. We've seen some signs of profitability. Bird backing out of SF. I mean, I know there was actually a comment from Aaron Paskin, who's a council member in SF, who said like Bird is immature or something.
That was the comment. Bird is immature.
He's not sad to see immature companies leave SF, and you don't have to dig very deep on Aaron Paskin to realize he might have some maturity issues himself and not be a very big fan of other mobility solutions. So maybe you can tell where I stand on that one. But yeah, it's a bummer to see him back out because I know they did a lot of work there. And in general, our job is to help these companies and try to applaud them. So kudos to Lime and kudos to the MDS standard. Moving right along, Julia, I'll round us out here with a question to you, Julia. Actually,
okay.
Would you ride on a scooter that could go 40 miles per hour? And you have to make it go 40 miles per hour. So you can't just level 1 like 20 or something.
Just like jump on and it's going at 40 miles an hour.
No, you can't just like it can go 40, but I'm only going to go like 20 on it. You have to actually.
I have to go 40 miles an hour.
I got to go 40.
Yeah, under the right conditions for sure. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah, just close down the LA freeways, and I'm just going to go on the freeways on the scooter.
I like that out. Okay, so Julia's in. I was wondering that. So our friends over at Electric Scooter Guide have a new review out, actually on the Solar P1. This is a scooter company out of the UK, and they've released a 40 mile per hour scooter that, and I love this graph from Electric Scooter Guide, that sort of shows you at not dissimilar to what we serve from Levi at a really incredible price point. So this is a very fast scooter that has a top speed of 40 miles per hour, but that is at $1,400 price. So we've had scooters that can go that fast, but as you can see, the price ranges are 30-40% more. So they've released it, it's out there, and people seem to love it. I don't want to go 40 miles per hour on a scooter myself. But Julia does, so we're 50-50. You have one customer here, which is really good. And keeping it on the scooter topic as well, I read this in Electric Scooter Guide as well, but actually this is the video is from Apollo. I don't know, all the scooter guys, all their videos are so dark. Like,
like Blade Runner. Yeah, like apocalyptic.
I mean, hey guys, I can't see the product. Like, at what point, does the...
So you don't mean metaphorically dark. You mean literally they're dark.
What do you think you're looking at here? It just says, I'll give you another quiz, Julia. What do you think this is?
I mean, this looks like a pedal to me.
Yeah. So this is the new Apollo Explorer, which is taking a little bit of a design innovation from our friends at Tor, who came out with the front-facing scooter. So these would be like pedals, like where you would rest your feet and ride the scooter front-facing. This is the first Apollo front-facing scooter, and it's coming out pretty soon. And the teaser video is really cool. Again, if I were just to talk with their marketing department a little bit, I'd say like it's kind of hard to see the scooter, but maybe that's what you're going for, because it's not out yet, so this is a tease. But it really just kind of looks like really black, and you see a little bit of steel. So, but it's these are front-facing pedals. So again, Julia.
So I was right. Yeah.
I mean, what's new?
Yeah, maybe it's a 2020 vision.
How do you feel about riding front-facing on a scooter?
I mean, what does that mean? What is riding front-facing?
Oh, wow. So like, imagine your scooter generally is like a skate.
Oh yeah, you have to go like this, and instead you go like this. Okay, so it's kind of like a Segway situation.
Your feet are parallel and they're facing forward. Your toes are forward.
I'm good with that. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
I don't know. I that's why I asked the question. I guess I could be good with it too, but I'm a little bit. Did you ride the tour by chance in at Micromobility America?
I didn't, but I saw a lot of people riding on it. It looked really fun.
Yeah, there's some big fans of it. But yeah, that's a front-facing scooter. Final question, Julia. Sorry, one more.
Okay.
Would you ride a skateboard that went 38 miles per hour?
Do I wish I could ride a skateboard that went 30 miles per hour? Like,
your answer on the scooter was like 40 miles per hour, no problem. Like, how do you feel about it?
It's like a little bit different. I don't know why, but like a skateboard. So, I'm not from SoCal. I didn't grow up like riding skateboards. So even like getting on a normal skateboard is kind of weird to me. So I feel like I would have to like, I would not be able to go 38 miles per hour at first. I would have to go like 5 miles per hour, see how I feel. Can I get my center of gravity right? Whatever. Do I think that this looks really cool? Do I wish I was able to do that? Yeah, for sure. But just off the bat, no. I think I'm a no on this. What about you, James?
Yeah, this is Defiant. I've ridden a lot of skateboards in my life, a lot of longboards. A lot of them have a surfy kind of feel to them. These guys are interesting from Defiant. They're like kind of combining the more SoCal or the more beach style of long skateboard, but there's some real tech under the hood, and that's what allows, of course, to get in the motors that allow it to go 38 miles per hour. My feeling in general is no. I mean, 38, in my opinion. I mean, we used to bomb down
fast.
When I was much younger, pretty fast on a non-electric skateboard, longboard. But yeah, that's fast. They do have some really good stopping technology as well. So you feel a little more in control at that speed. But yeah, I think it's just like a theme we've been going through, Julia, where a lot of these vehicles are getting faster, and I think they're getting faster because there's a market for it, but not always market. So I think
not us. Just we're not the market.
You're 40 on a scooter. You're not 38 on a skateboard. Did I get that right?
Nope. Yep, that's right.
Maybe for the audience, what would be the top speed of a skateboard that Julia would go?
And are we going to drop this in the comments, or am I going to answer this?
I don't know.
If somebody gets it right, then we get them a skateboard.
We're going to be bankrupt by week 6.
I know. James, I know we're getting towards the end of our show here, but I just want to do like maybe one more plug/story. So on the Micromobility podcast this week, we've got my conversation with America's electrification chief, and also the self-confessed electric bike nut, Gabe Klein. This was actually a really fun conversation. Gabe has a super important job in the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Department of Energy. He is really responsible for rolling out charging infrastructure for passenger vehicles across the U.S. It's funny because, I know Gabe, Gabe probably from being more of an urban design, policy wonk, saying that we need bike lanes, saying that we should be redesigning streets with slow lanes for micromobility, thinking about how do we get people out of cars. So it's interesting to see him in this new role where really he is focused very much on light duty vehicles. But I think it just goes to show that, we need to cross the aisle, so to speak, in terms of people who are really pro e-bikes, bike lane infrastructure, and then also pro electric vehicles, in order to be able to get to this both and approach of not just, kind of switching out our internal combustion engine vehicles right now for electric vehicles, but also really try to reduce people's reliance on cars, and provide them with mobility options that are safer, and that meet a broader set of needs, especially affordability needs. But I just wanted to say, related to that too, James, at the same time as we have folks like Gabe who are going into the electric vehicle space, and I say that sadly because it's like I would love to have his brain power just solely focused on micromobility and design. We're getting stories about how electric vehicles, especially the heavy ones like electric trucks, are not necessarily better for the planet than gas-powered alternatives. And what this chart shows, and I think it's kind of a cool way of showing it, is that the emissions impact of some of these larger electric vehicles, things like the Ford F-150 Lightning, which to be fair is like a really cool looking car. And I'm glad that they are creating an electric truck. Things like the electric Hummer, which, we've seen Biden riding around, are actually just the same emissions impact as some of these smaller gas cars. And probably this crossover is actually even a little bit higher too. So if you think that you're making a decision for climate and you're getting an electric truck, newsflash, you're probably not. So, James, not to end on too sorry of a story around climate and around electric trucks. Just want to say one other, kind of good news story actually is around something called the Great American Rail Trail. So James, have you seen this before?
I have, yeah. And I'm totally into it. And I know they've been working on it for a long time. I know some people, of course, I've never ridden coast to coast. People have, but this is a very cool project.
I mean, that would be super cool. Being able to go from DC to Washington State, just all along a bike trail. I mean, I probably, if I was under duress, could name all the states that this goes through. But James, I'm curious, like maybe we should do that for the commentator who is able to get all of these states correct. Then they're one of the first who gets to do the Great American Rail Trail.
Well, and hopefully one of those commenters is working on that Rocky Mountain Pass up there, because that is a challenging place to get across. And I think kudos if they can finalize that and make it a real trail that anyone can go on and be protected. And I would definitely go coast to coast. I definitely want to go to coast to coast.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I hope they do a southern route too, just kind of unlock both.
Come on, down to SoCal, let's do this.
Exactly, Georgia to California.
Yep, there we go. Yeah,
or Carolinas to California. Let's keep with the alliteration.
Even better. Good job. Yeah, and kudos to you on your game interview. That was great. I saw him promote that on LinkedIn, and he said, kind of like electrify everything, which is I think a really fun kind of tagline to get behind and be about. Clearly, there's a lot of questions on how we do that, but I think he's a really inspiring speaker. So I think it's great to see someone like that in a position like he's in, and I think it's just going to be a great news for micromobility people around the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, nice job on that. Cool. Well, I think we're done here, Julia. This has been a crazy episode. We had our first ever, CEO of a company doing 200,000 e-bikes a year, selling 200,000 e-bikes a year. Come on and pitch us, and we'll give that Lectric XPedition away. So we'll give it to our best comment of the week. So you have all week to basically leave a comment until our next week. But yeah, that's a big thing, I think, to make sure that we recap on. Anything else?
James, I think that's it. I mean, this is maybe our most exciting episode to date. So let's hope that this is just the floor, not the ceiling.
There we go. Yeah, stay tuned. Good point. Next week, we also might have a special guest. And we might have Julia on 2 wheels, maybe. Some new wheels?
I don't know. Maybe 4. Maybe it's going to be a skateboard. Who knows?
Yeah. So we got more coming for you, though. It's going to get more and more exciting. Thank you for tuning in.
All right, James, how do we sign this off? What do we say? Right on. All right. Till next week.
See you.